The twin suns of Zenthari Prime cast long shadows across the ancient ruins as Dr. Elena Rodriguez carefully brushed sand away from the crystal surface. She had been working at this dig site for 3 months now, and every day brought new mysteries. The Zenthari people claimed these ruins were older than their recorded history, but Elena suspected they were far older than anyone imagined. Her communication device buzzed softly. "Elena, you need to see this," called Dr. Marcus Webb from across the excavation site. He was pointing at something buried deep in what appeared to be a ceremonial chamber. Elena wiped sweat from her forehead and walked over to where Marcus stood. The chamber walls were covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and change in the light. But what caught her attention was the large crystal tablet embedded in the far wall. It was different from anything they had found before. "Have you tried scanning it yet?" Lena asked, pulling out her portable analyzer. "That's the strange part," Marcus replied, shaking his head. "The scanner can't get a proper reading. It's like the crystal is blocking our equipment somehow." Lena approached the tablet carefully. The surface was smooth and clear, but she could see symbols floating inside the crystal itself. They seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. She got closer. The symbols began to move faster, almost as if they were responding to her presence. "Marcus, are you recording this?" she whispered, not wanting to disturb whatever was happening. "Recording everything," he confirmed. Holding up his camera device, Elena reached out slowly and touched the crystal surface. The moment her fingers made contact, the entire chamber filled with soft blue light. The symbols inside the crystal began spinning rapidly, and suddenly Elena could understand them. Not read them exactly, but understand their meaning directly in her mind. The images that flowed into her consciousness were terrifying and beautiful at the same time. She saw vast fleets of ships crossing the dark spaces between stars. She saw worlds being born and others dying. And through it all, there was a warning about something called the Children of Soul. Elena jerked her hand back, gasping. The light faded, and the symbols returned to their slow, steady pulse. "Elena, what happened?" "You were standing there for almost 10 minutes without moving," Marcus said, genuine concern in his voice. 10 minutes? It felt like seconds. Stared at the crystal tablet. "Marcus, I think we found something that could change everything we know about galactic history." Over the next several hours, Elena made careful contact with the tablet multiple times. Each touch revealed more information, more warnings, more details about the Children of Soul. The ancient Zenthari, who had created this chamber, had left a message for future generations. They had seen something in their distant past that terrified them enough to hide warnings in the deepest, most protected places they could create. The message was fragmented and hard to understand completely, but the main points were clear. Somewhere in the galaxy lived a species that would one day spread across the stars. They were called the Children of Soul, and they came from the third world of a small yellow star. When they finally left their homeworld and began exploring space, they would bring either salvation or destruction to the galaxy. The ancient Zenthari couldn't decide which. Elena sat in her temporary shelter that evening, staring at the data she had collected. The implications were staggering. Sol was the name humans used for their own sun. Earth was the third planet from Sol. The ancient warning was about humanity. She activated her long-range communication system and sent an encrypted message to Commander Jake Morrison aboard the UES Pathfinder. Jake had been her friend since their academy days, and she trusted him more than anyone else in human space. "Jake, I found something on Zenthari Prime that you need to know about. The ancient ruins here contain warnings about humanity. Sending you the preliminary data, but we need to talk privately as soon as possible. This could change everything about how other species see us." The next morning brought unwelcome visitors. A group of Zenthari officials arrived at the dig site, led by a tall, stern-looking individual named Kethfer. They examined Elena's work with obvious displeasure. "Dr. Rodriguez," Kethfer said, in careful formal English, "we have decided that this excavation site contains materials too sensitive for off-world researchers. You and your team will need to cease operations immediately." "I don't understand," Elena replied, trying to keep her voice calm. "The Galactic Archaeological Consortium approved this dig months ago. All our permits are in order." "Circumstances have changed, Kethver stated flatly. New information has come to light regarding the contents of these ruins. For the safety of all species, access must be restricted. Alina realized that somehow word of her discovery had already spread. Someone had been monitoring their communications, or perhaps the Zenthari had their own ways of accessing the ancient tablets. Give me 24 hours to document my findings properly, Alina requested. I have a responsibility to the scientific community to record what we've learned here. Kethver considered this for a long moment. 12 hours. After that, you leave Zenthari Prime. As the Zenthari officials departed, Marcus approached Alina with worry written across his face. What's really going on here, Alina? This isn't just about archaeological protocols. Alina looked back at the crystal tablet, still pulsing with its mysterious inner light. I think we've stumbled into something much bigger than ancient history. Marcus, the question is, what do we do about it? Meanwhile, aboard the UES Pathfinder, Commander Jake Morrison read Alina's encrypted message with growing concern. He had served in human space for 15 years and had seen how some alien species looked at humanity with suspicion. Humans had spread across the galaxy faster than any other species in recorded history. Their technology advanced at a rate that made older civilizations nervous. And now, there was evidence that this expansion had been predicted and possibly feared by civilizations that existed millions of years ago. Jake called a private meeting with his senior officers. We may have a situation developing, he told them. I can't share all the details yet, but I want all departments to run quiet diagnostics on our systems. Make sure everything is functioning perfectly. Prepare for the possibility that we might need to leave our current position quickly. His chief of security, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, raised an eyebrow. Are we expecting trouble, Commander? I'm not sure yet, Jake replied honestly, but I want us ready for anything. Back on Zenthari Prime, Alina worked frantically to document everything she could from the crystal tablets. The warnings about humanity were extensive and detailed. The ancient Zenthari had somehow foreseen that humans would develop faster than light travel, would establish colonies across multiple star systems, and would eventually come into contact with older galactic civilizations. But the most disturbing part of the message was what it suggested about humanity's ultimate fate. The ancient warnings spoke of a great conflict, a time when the children of Sol would face the combined might of the galaxy. The outcome of this conflict would determine whether the galaxy entered a new age of prosperity or fell into darkness. As Alina prepared to leave Zenthari Prime, she realized that she might be carrying information that could start the very conflict the ancients had warned about. The question was whether sharing this knowledge would help prevent disaster or guarantee it. The crystal tablet pulsed one final time as she packed her equipment, and Alina could swear she heard something like a whisper in her mind. The time of choosing approaches. 3 weeks after leaving Zenthari Prime, Alina Rodriguez found herself in protective custody aboard a human space station orbiting Neptune. The information she had discovered was too dangerous to share openly, but word was already spreading. Through the galaxy's communication networks, someone had leaked fragments of the ancient warnings, and the reaction was swift and alarming. Commander Jake Morrison sat across from Alina in the secure briefing room, his face grim as he reviewed the latest intelligence reports. It's getting worse out there, he said, sliding a datapad across the table. Look at these diplomatic communications we've intercepted. Alina read through the messages with growing dread. The Altarian Republic had formally requested that all human settlements be placed under galactic monitoring. The Dracona's Empire was mobilizing their war fleets under the pretense of defensive preparations. Even the normally neutral Crystalline Collective had begun restricting trade with human colonies. How did this information spread so quickly? Lena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The Zenthari Jake confirmed. They've been sharing selected portions of the ancient warnings with other species governments. They're presenting it as a matter of galactic security. At that moment, the briefing room door opened and Admiral Patricia Hayes entered, followed by a man Alina didn't recognize. The stranger was tall, with graying hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Dr. Rodriguez, Admiral Hayes said, "I'd like you to meet Director Carl Stone from Earth's Strategic Intelligence Division. He's been coordinating our response to this crisis. Director Stone sat down and activated a holographic display showing a map of known space. Red zones marked areas where human ships were no longer welcome. Yellow zones indicated restricted access, and the small remaining green zones showed where humans could still travel freely. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, Stone began. Without preamble, we estimate that within 2 months, human space will be completely isolated from the rest of the galaxy. But that's not the worst part. The holographic display shifted to show fleet movements throughout the galaxy. Massive formations of alien warships were converging on strategic positions around human territory. They're not just planning to isolate us, Jake realized, his voice quiet. They're planning to eliminate us entirely. Stone nodded grimly. Intelligence suggests that a formal alliance is being negotiated between the major powers. They're calling it the Galactic Preservation Coalition. Their stated goal is to prevent the ancient prophecy from coming true by removing the threat before it can fully manifest. Alina felt sick. Her archaeological discovery was about to trigger the very conflict the ancient warnings had predicted. There has to be something we can do. Some way to prove that humans aren't the threat they think we are. That's what we're hoping, Admiral Hayes said. Dr. Rodriguez, we need you to continue studying the ancient tablets. There might be information we're missing, something that could change how other species interpret these warnings. Over the following days, Alina worked tirelessly with the data she had collected from Zenthari Prime. She enlisted the help of Dr. Robert Chen, a linguistic expert, and Dr. Amy Foster, a specialist in ancient civilizations. Together, they began to uncover layers of meaning in the crystal tablet messages that hadn't been apparent during her initial contact. Look at this section, Dr. Chen said, pointing to a particular sequence of symbols. The translation software interpreted this as bringers of destruction, but the root symbols suggest something more complex. It could mean those who bring change through conflict, or even catalysts of transformation. Dr. Foster had been studying the historical context of the warnings. The time period when these tablets were created coincides with what we know as the Great Silence in galactic history. Multiple advanced civilizations simply disappeared around the same time, leaving behind only ruins and fragments. Alina studied the new interpretations carefully. What if the ancient Zenthari weren't warning about humans as a threat to the galaxy? What if they were warning about what would happen if humans weren't there when they were needed? Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Captain Ryan Brooks commanded the UES Defender on what was supposed to be a routine patrol of the Kepler sector. His crew was conducting standard surveys of uninhabited systems when his communications officer, Lieutenant Tony Martinez, reported incoming signals. "Captain, we're being hailed by multiple vessels," Martinez announced. Configuration suggests Draconis Empire battlecruisers. On screen, Brooks ordered, though he already suspected this encounter wouldn't be friendly. The main display showed the imposing figure of Draconis War Commander Vextel, his reptilian features twisted into what Brooks had learned to recognize as extreme hostility among his species. Human vessel, Vextel S. translated voice filled the bridge. "You are in violation of Galactic Preservation Zone 77 Alpha. By authority of the Emergency Coalition Charter, you will surrender your ship and submit to protective custody." Brooks stood slowly, his hand unconsciously moving toward his sidearm. "Commander Vextel, this is Captain Ryan Brooks of the United Earth Ship Defender. We are conducting lawful operations in neutral space under existing galactic treaties. We have no intention of surrendering our vessel." "The old treaties are void," Vexel replied coldly. "New circumstances require new measures. You have 30 seconds to comply before we open fire." Brooks looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. 23 men and women who had signed up to explore the galaxy, not to fight a war against it. But he could see determination in their eyes, not fear. "Lieutenant Martinez, send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them the Draconis Empire has fired the first shots." Brooks turned back to the main screen. "Commander Vextel, the UES Defender, respectfully declines your generous offer." The first energy beam struck the Defender's shields, exactly 30 seconds. Later, news of the battle in the Kepler sector reached Earth within hours through quantum communication networks. President Amanda Cole convened an emergency session of the Global Defense Council in the Situation Room beneath Geneva. The holographic displays showed real-time tactical information as the Defender fought a running battle against superior numbers. General Kevin Martinez, no relation to the communications officer aboard the Defender, presented the military assessment. The Defender is heavily outgunned, but Captain Brooks is using the asteroid field to his advantage. He's managed to disable 2 Draconis ships, but his shields are failing. What are our options? President Cole asked. Limited, the general admitted. We have 3 battle groups within range, but sending them would escalate this into a full-scale conflict. On the other hand, if we abandon the Defender, it sends a message that we won't defend our own people. President Cole studied the tactical display for several long moments. The decision she made in the next few minutes would determine whether humanity faced the galaxy's wrath alone or with whatever dignity they could muster. Send the battle groups, she decided. If they want a war, they'll have one, but we don't abandon our people. As human reinforcements jumped into the Kepler sector, similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. The careful diplomatic balance that had maintained peace between species for centuries was collapsing. Center of a storm that ancient civilizations had seen coming millions of years ago, back on the Neptune station, Lena Rodriguez watched the news feeds with a growing sense of responsibility and dread. The warnings she had uncovered were becoming reality, but she was beginning to suspect that everyone, including herself, had misunderstood what those warnings actually meant. The crystal tablets hadn't been warning about humanity's rise. They had been preparing the galaxy for humanity's awakening, and that awakening was about to begin. The war had been raging for 6 months when Admiral Suzanne Blake received the evacuation order for the Proxima defense line. Her fleet of 37 human warships faced an alien armada of over 200 vessels from 6 different species. The math was simple and brutal. Humanity was losing. Admiral, the transport ships from Proxima Colony are requesting escort to the jump point, reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Paul Davis. His voice carried the strain of too many sleepless nights and too many friends lost. Admiral Blake studied the tactical display floating above her command table. The alien fleet was positioned perfectly to intercept the fleeing colonists. Her ships could provide cover, but it would mean certain destruction for most of her fleet. Signal all ships, she said quietly. We're going to buy those transports. The time they need, full attack formation. As the human fleet moved to engage the superior alien forces, something unexpected was happening aboard the transport ships carrying refugees from Proxima Colony. Sergeant Chris Walker was helping elderly colonists to their seats when he suddenly froze, his head turning toward the viewport. "Sergeant Walker, are you all right?" asked Dr. Lisa Park, the transport's medical officer. Chris didn't answer immediately. His eyes were focused on something outside the ship, but his expression suggested he was seeing more than just empty space. "They're coming from the left," he said suddenly. 3 squadrons of Draconis fighters trying to flank Admiral Blake's formation. Dr. Park looked out the viewport, but saw nothing except distant stars and the flashes of weapons fire from the main battle. "I don't see anything, Sergeant." "Trust me," Chris said, reaching for the transport's communication system. "Admiral Blake. This is Sergeant Walker aboard Transport 7. You have enemy fighters approaching your port side bearing 27 Mark IV.
Estimate 12 minutes.
Until contact." Admiral Blake's voice crackled over the COM system.
Transport
7. Our sensors show no enemy contacts on that vector. They're there, Admiral. I can see them coming. Against her better judgment, Admiral Blake ordered 2 of her ships to investigate the area Sergeant Walker had indicated. 3 minutes later, they detected the cloaked Draconis fighters exactly where he had predicted. The ambush was stopped. But Admiral Blake was left with questions she couldn't answer. How had a ground soldier on a transport ship detected enemy vessels that her advanced sensors had missed? Similar incidents were occurring throughout human space. On the mining station Series 7, Engineer Katie Johnson was working to repair damaged life support systems when the station's computer network suddenly responded to her thoughts instead of her commands. She found herself accessing systems she had never seen before, understanding complex programming languages she had never learned, "Katie, how did you bypass the security protocols?" asked her supervisor, Tom Richards, staring at her workstation. In amazement, Katie looked at her hands, which were still resting on the keyboard. "Though she hadn't consciously typed anything for the past 10 minutes, I'm not sure. I just thought about what needed to be done," and the system responded. Meanwhile, Dr. Alina Rodriguez was making breakthrough discoveries in her continued study of the ancient crystal tablets. Working with her expanded research team on the Neptune station, she had managed to access deeper layers of information stored within the crystalline matrix. "The tablets aren't just warnings," she explained to Commander Jake Morrison during their daily briefing, their instruction manuals. "The ancient Zenthari weren't afraid of humanity. They were preparing the galaxy for our arrival."
Oh.
Jake leaned forward in his chair. "What do you mean, preparing?" "Look at this section," Elena said, activating a holographic display of the tablet's symbol patterns. "These symbols describe what they call the awakening process. It happens when a species faces extinctional-level threats. The ancient Zenthari called it the emergence of the guardian nature." Dr. Robert Chen, who had been working on linguistic patterns, added his own findings. "The term they use for humans isn't actually children of soul. The more accurate translation would be inheritors of the architects. And these architects appear to have been some kind of galactic protector. Species." Elena's excitement was building as pieces of the puzzle came together. "The Zenthari tablets describe the architects as beings who transcended physical existence millions of years ago. But before they left, they planted seeds of their abilities in various species throughout the galaxy. Seeds that would awaken under extreme stress," Jake concluded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Back on the front lines. The effects of this awakening were becoming impossible to ignore." Lieutenant Commander Alex Foster was leading his squadron in a desperate defense of the New Sydney colony when his entire unit suddenly began moving with perfect coordination. They anticipated each other's actions, communicated without words, and executed complex maneuvers that should have required hours of planning. "How do we know to do that?" asked his wingman, Lieutenant Carol White. After they had successfully repelled an attack by a force 3 times their size, Alex couldn't answer her question, because he didn't understand it himself. All he knew was that during the battle, he had felt connected to his entire squadron in a way that went beyond normal communication. He had known what each pilot was thinking, what they were planning to do, and how he could best support their actions. Similar reports were flooding in from across human space. Medical officer Dr. Nicole Adams found she could somehow accelerate healing in wounded soldiers just by touching them. Technician Gary Miller discovered he could repair complex machinery by understanding its function at a level that seemed almost supernatural. Communications specialist Beth Taylor began receiving messages from human ships before they were actually transmitted. The alien coalition forces were noticing these changes too, and they were becoming increasingly desperate to end the war before humanity's abilities fully developed. Supreme Commander Vikmer of the Zenthari had assembled the largest military force in galactic history, representing every major species except humanity. "We must act quickly." Vekmer addressed the coalition leaders via secure holographic conference. "The humans are becoming what our ancestors warned us about. If we delay much longer, it may be impossible to stop them." The Altarian representative, Elder Vex High, expressed the concerns many were feeling. "What we are witnessing does not match the warnings in the ancient texts. The humans are not demonstrating destructive tendencies. They are showing remarkable restraint despite our aggression against them. It makes them more dangerous, not less," argued Draconis war leader Kexaval. "A species with such abilities could dominate the galaxy without ever appearing to be conquerors. It could control us all while making us believe we were still free." Back on the Neptune station, Alina made the discovery that would change everything. Deep within the most protected layer of the crystal tablet's information matrix, she found what appeared to be a complete historical record of the architect's final days. "Jake, you need to see this," she called urgently. The architects didn't just disappear. They left because they detected something coming from outside the galaxy, something that required their full attention to combat. The holographic display showed images that were both beautiful and terrifying. Vast structures floating in the void. Between galaxies, entities of pure energy that consumed entire star systems. In the final battle between the architects and these cosmic predators, they won, Alina continued, her voice filled with awe, but the effort transformed them beyond physical existence. Before they transcended, they scattered their genetic and psychic legacy across the galaxy, creating backup guardians in case the threat ever returned. Jake stared at the ancient images, understanding flooding through him. The threat is returning, isn't it? Lena nodded grimly. According to these records, the cosmic predators follow a cycle. They attack, get defeated, retreat to recover, then attack again millions of years later. The cycle is about to repeat, and humanity is supposed to fight them. It's not just humanity, Alina corrected. All the species of the galaxy working together. But humanity is meant to lead the defense because we carry the strongest genetic memory of how to fight these entities. As if to confirm her words, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Lieutenant Sarah Kim's voice came over the communication system with urgency that sent chills through everyone listening. All personnel, 2 stations. Long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures approaching the galactic rim. Unknown contacts estimated size beyond our measurement capability. Time to arrival at outer colonies. Approximately 6 months. The real war was about to begin, and humanity was finally understanding their true purpose in the galaxy. The massive alien armada converged on Earth's solar system like a storm gathering strength. Supreme Commander Thekmar led the coalition fleet from his flagship, ancient Zenthari dreadnought Final Truth. Behind him followed 300 warships representing every major species in the galaxy except humanity. On Earth, President Amanda Cole stood in the Emergency Command Center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching the approaching fleet on holographic displays, as the enemy forces outnumbered humanity's defenders by more than 10 to 1. But something had changed in the human ships during the past few weeks. Status report, President Cole requested from General Kevin Martinez. All fleet elements report ready, Madam President, the general replied, though uncertainty colored his voice. But I have to tell you, our crews are reporting some very unusual phenomena. Ship coordination levels are off the charts. Response times are faster than our equipment should allow. And the pilots are claiming they can sense enemy intentions before they're acted upon. Colonel Sam Rodriguez, Elena's brother and commander of Earth's orbital defense grid, added his own observations. The defensive stations are operating as if they're all connected to a single brain. My technicians barely need to give commands. Anymore, the systems seem to anticipate what needs to be done. President Cole nodded grimly. She had read Elena's latest reports about the architect legacy awakening in humanity. What they were witnessing was either humanity's salvation or the final confirmation of the galaxy's worst fears about their species. Meanwhile, aboard the EU's valiant Captain Danny Cooper was experiencing the awakening firsthand. As his ship moved into position to defend Earth's outer perimeter, he found himself aware of every other human vessel in the fleet. It's not through communication systems, but through something deeper and more fundamental. Captain, his navigation officer, Lieutenant Mike Foster called out with amazement in his voice. The helm is responding to my thoughts before I touch the controls. Same here with the weapons systems, reported Gunnery Sergeant Maria Santos. It's like the ship knows what we want to do before we decide to do it. Captain Cooper could feel the truth of their words. The Valiant was becoming an extension of his crew's collective will rather than just a machine they operated. More than that, he was aware of similar changes occurring throughout the human fleet. The first contact between the two forces occurred near Jupiter's moons. A squadron of Draconis fighters engaged the UES Defender and 3 escort vessels. Should have been a brief skirmish that ended in human defeat, became something extraordinary. The human ships moved together, like dancers following perfect choreography. They anticipated enemy movements, coordinated their attacks without apparent communication, executed maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The Draconis fighters, despite their superior numbers and firepower, found themselves outmatched by opponents who fought as a single entity. Impossible. War leader Kexaville transmitted to the coalition fleet. The human ships are phasing through our weapons fire. Our targeting systems cannot lock onto them consistently. Supreme Commander Thekmer watched the engagement from his flagship. With growing concern, the ancient warnings had mentioned this possibility, but seeing it firsthand was deeply unsettling. The humans were not just awakening their dormant abilities, they were awakening as a collective consciousness. Back on Earth, Actor Alina Rodriguez was monitoring the battle from the Neptune research station when she made contact with the crystal tablets one final time. As her hand touched the ancient artifact, the full truth of humanity's heritage flooded her consciousness. She saw the architects in their prime, beings of incredible power and wisdom who had shepherded the galaxy through countless crises. Witnessed their final battle against the cosmic predators, entities of pure hunger that consumed entire star systems to fuel their growth, and she understood the sacrifice the architects had made to protect all life in the galaxy. "Jake," she called to Commander Morrison, who was coordinating fleet communications from the station. "Know what's happening to our people?" The architects didn't just leave genetic memories, they left pieces of their actual consciousness scattered. Throughout humanity, when we face extinction, those fragments activate and connect us to each other and to them. Jake looked up from his communication displays, where reports of impossible human victories were streaming in from across the solar system. "Are you saying our people are becoming something other than human?" "Not other than human," Alina corrected. "More than human? We're becoming what the architects were before they transcended physical existence. We're becoming the galaxy's guardians." The revelation was interrupted by urgent alarms. The main alien fleet was beginning its final approach to Earth. 300 warships moved in perfect formation toward humanity's home world, their weapons charging for what Supreme Commander Thekmer intended to be the final battle. But as the alien fleet drew closer, something unprecedented began happening throughout human space. Every human being, whether on ships, space stations, or planetary colonies, felt a connection forming in their minds. Not telepathy exactly, but something deeper, a shared consciousness that linked them all together. On the surface of Mars, civilian colonist Jennifer Walsh suddenly found herself aware of the battle raging near Earth. On the mining station in the asteroid belt, worker Dave Miller felt the determination of the human fleet as if it were his own emotion. Schools on Luna looked up from their lessons, somehow knowing that their species was facing its greatest test. The connection reached its peak as the alien Armada entered Earth's gravity well. Every human in the solar system became part of a single, unified awareness. They were still individuals, but they were also something greater, a collective guardian. Consciousness awakening after millions of years of dormancy, Captain Danny Cooper felt the change most strongly as the valiant engaged enemy battleships near Earth's moon. He realized he was no longer just commanding one ship. Through the awakened connection, he was coordinating with every human vessel in the fleet. More than that, he could sense the presence of the architects themselves, ancient wisdom flowing through the collective human consciousness. "All ships," he transmitted, though he knew the words were unnecessary. Every human captain already knew what needed to be done. "Remember who we are. Remember why we're here." The human fleet began moving with impossible precision. Ships that should have been destroyed by overwhelming firepower somehow phased through enemy attacks. Weapons that should have missed their targets struck with uncanny accuracy. Defensive formations that should have collapsed under pressure instead grew stronger as they adapted to each new threat. Supreme Commander Thekmer watched in growing horror as his superior forces were systematically outmaneuvered by an enemy that fought like a single organism. "All ships concentrate fire on the human flagship," he ordered desperately. "If we can break their coordination, ... But there was no single flagship to target. Every human ship had become equally important, equally connected. Destroying one vessel only strengthened the resolve of the others. The awakened human consciousness was distributed across their entire fleet, making it impossible to disrupt through conventional attacks. Elder Vex High of the Altarians opened a communication channel to the Coalition fleet. "Commander Thekmer, we must reconsider our position. What we are witnessing is not the emergence of a galactic threat. It is the return of the galaxy's protectors. The humans are not trying to destroy us," added Captain Yelinara of the Crystalline Collective. "Every shot they fire is precisely aimed to disable rather than kill." They could have destroyed our ships, but they are choosing not to, as if to confirm her words. The U's Valiant moved alongside a damaged Draconis cruiser and began transmitting repair instructions rather than delivering a killing blow. Similar acts of mercy were occurring throughout the battle zone as human ships prioritized saving alien lives over achieving military victory. The awakening was complete. The galaxy was about to learn the true nature of humanity's destiny. The battle in Earth's solar system came to an unexpected halt when every sensor in the galaxy detected the same terrifying signal. At the outer edge of known space, reality itself was tearing apart as something vast and hungry pushed through. From the void between galaxies, Supreme Commander Thickmore stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. The entity approaching their galaxy was larger than entire star systems, a writhing mass of energy and darkness that consumed everything in its path. His ancient Zenthari ancestors had warned of this day, but seeing it with his own eyes was beyond anything he had imagined. All ships cease fire, he transmitted to the Coalition fleet. The order felt strange after months of warfare, but the approaching threat made their conflict with humanity seem insignificant. Captain Danny Cooper received the ceasefire order aboard the EU's Valiant, but his attention was focused on something else entirely. Through the awakened human consciousness, he could feel the presence of the architects more clearly than ever before. Ancient voices whispered guidance through the collective awareness that now linked every human in the galaxy. "They're called the Devourers," he announced to his crew, though the information came from knowledge millions of years old. They consume life energy to fuel their own existence. The architects fought them once before, but it took everything. They had to drive them back. President Amanda Cole watched the unfolding crisis from Earth's command center. The holographic displays showed both the alien fleet surrounding her world and the cosmic horror approaching from Galactic Rim. The irony was not lost on her. Humanity had been on the verge of extinction from one threat when a far greater danger appeared. "Open a channel to the Coalition fleet," she ordered. Supreme Commander Thickmore's reptilian features appeared on the main screen moments later. Despite being enemies just minutes before, both leaders recognized that their situation had changed completely. "Commander," President Cole began, "I believe we need to discuss our mutual survival." "Agreed," Thickmore replied simply. The ancient warnings were not about your species being a threat to us. They were about the threat that would require your abilities to defeat. Dr. Alina Rodriguez was still connected to the crystal tablets on the Neptune station when the full scope of the crisis became clear to her. The architect consciousness flowing through humanity was not just awakening, it was preparing for the battle. It had been created to fight. "Jake," she called to Commander Morrison, "I'm receiving detailed tactical information from the tablets. The Devourers have a weakness, but exploiting it requires perfect coordination between every intelligent species in the galaxy." Jake studied. The data Alina was transmitting shows a battle formation involving thousands of ships from dozens of different species. The humans provide coordination and psychic linking, while each alien species contributes their unique technological advantages. Exactly. The architects designed the genetic legacy they left in humanity to serve as a unifying force. We're meant to connect all the galaxy's species into a single fighting force. The first test of this theory came when Captain Danny Cooper reached out through the awakened human consciousness to establish contact with the alien ships. Instead of trying to control or dominate the other species, he offered to share the coordination abilities that humanity had developed. Elder Vexhai of the Altarians was the first to accept the connection. As the psychic link formed between human and alien consciousness, his ship's performance immediately improved. His crew found themselves able to anticipate system failures and coordinate repairs with unprecedented efficiency. "This is remarkable, Vex," High transmitted to the Coalition fleet. "The humans are not trying to control us, but they are enhancing our natural abilities while maintaining our independence." One by one, other alien captains accepted the human-mediated connection. The Draconis contributed their superior weapons technology. The Crystalline Collective provided advanced shield systems, and the Zenthari shared their ancient knowledge of the Devourers' attack patterns. As the psychic network expanded to include all species, something unprecedented occurred. For the first time in galactic history, every intelligent species was working together as a unified force while maintaining their individual identities and cultures. Colonel Sam Rodriguez watched from Earth's orbital defense grid as the combined fleet began moving in perfect formation. Ships that had been trying to destroy each other minutes before now operated as parts of a single organism. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. All defense stations report. Ready, he announced to President Cole. The orbital platforms are integrated into the collective network. We have firepower and coordination levels that exceed any previous military formation in galactic history. The Devourer entity reached the outer colonies within hours of first detection. Entire star systems simply ceased to exist as the cosmic predator consumed them. But for the first time in millions of years, the galaxy was ready to fight back. Admiral Susan Blake commanded the First Contact Force, a mixed fleet of human and alien vessels that engaged the Devourer near the ruins of the Kepler colonies. The battle was unlike anything in recorded history. The Devourer attacked with tendrils of pure energy that could drain the life from entire planets. But the combined fleet fought back with perfectly coordinated precision. Human psychic abilities provided early warning of attacks. Draconis weapons punched holes in the entity's energy matrix. And Altarian healing technology kept damaged ships in the fight. "It's working," Admiral Blake reported back to Earth. "The Devourer is taking damage. Real damage. We're actually hurting it. The victory came at a cost." The psychic strain of coordinating such a massive battle was pushing human consciousness to its limits. Throughout the galaxy, humans began experiencing the same transcendence that had claimed the original architects millions of years before. Dr. Alina Rodriguez felt it first, her connection to the crystal tablets deepening until she could perceive realities beyond physical existence. "Jake," she said, her voice already sounding distant, "I think I understand what happened to the architects. The power required to defeat the Devourers transforms those who wield it." Jake watched in amazement and sadness as Elena's physical form began to shimmer and fade. She was becoming something beyond human, something closer to pure consciousness than matter. "Will we lose ourselves completely?" he asked. Elena smiled, her form now translucent but her mind clearer than ever. "No, we become more than we were. The architects didn't disappear, they evolved. And they've been waiting for us to join them." The final battle took place in the galactic core, where the Devourer had grown to its full size by consuming dozens of star systems. The combined fleet of all galactic species faced an entity that dwarfed entire solar systems. But they fought with the coordination and power of the awakened architects. Captain Danny Cooper led the final assault, his consciousness now expanded beyond his physical form to encompass the entire human species. Through him, every human became a conduit for architect power, linking all galactic species into a single weapon capable of harming a cosmic predator. The battle lasted for days, with reality itself bending under the forces involved. But in the end, the Devourer was not destroyed, but driven back into the void between galaxies, wounded and forced to retreat for another cosmic cycle. As the immediate threat ended, the transformed humans faced a choice. They could complete their evolution and join the architects in their transcendent existence, or remain in physical form to guide the galaxy through the rebuilding process. President Amanda Cole, now speaking for all humanity through their shared consciousness, addressed the galaxy from the rebuilt United Nations building on Earth. "The ancient revelation spoke of humanity as a threat," she said, her words carried by quantum communication to every inhabited world. "But it was never a threat to you. It was a threat to those who would harm you. Humanity accepts its role as guardians of this galaxy, not as rulers, but as protectors." The speech marked the beginning of a new age. Humans retained enough of their enhanced abilities to serve as coordinators and protectors while remaining fundamentally human. The other species maintained their independence and cultures, while benefiting from the psychic network that allowed unprecedented cooperation. The oldest revelation in the galaxy had finally been fulfilled, but not in the way anyone had expected. Humanity was indeed the threat the ancients had foreseen, a threat to cosmic predators, galactic tyrants, and any force that would bring harm to the community of intelligent life. The children of Sol had found their purpose among the stars. The galaxy was safer for their presence.